There is this very specific, really suffocating kind of thought that honestly only seems to arrive in the dead of night.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a midnight kind of thing.
Right, like it never happens during the chaos of the day. You don't think about it when you're rushing across campus, trying to make it to a lecture on time, or when you're sitting in a crowded study hall just cramming for midterms.
No, it waits for the silence.
Exactly. It waits for that moment when the house or the dorm is completely quiet. I mean, the only sound is that low mechanical hum of the refrigerator in the other room.
Yeah, and the only light is that cold, artificial blue glow of your phone screen just reflecting off your face.
And the thought, it doesn't come crashing in like a panic attack. It's far more insidious than that. It just creeps in, settling into the back of your mind like a whisper.
And that whisper is an incredibly heavy one. It's that thought of, well, I wonder if things would be easier for everyone if I just needed less.
That's the one, that exact thought. You're lying there, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, and your mind just starts running this highlight reel of exhaustion.
A highlight reel of other people's exhaustion, usually.
Right. Maybe you're picturing your dad walking through the front door after a brutal shift, dropping his keys on the counter, and just looking completely, totally hollowed out.
Or remembering the look on your mom's face last week.
Yeah, when she was sitting at the kitchen table, quietly staring at a laptop screen, paying a tuition bill, or covering the cost of some wildly expensive textbook.
And she didn't complain. She didn't even mention it to you.
But you saw the slight tightening of her jaw, or maybe there wasn't even a specific event. Maybe it was just a random, unremarkable Tuesday, and yet you still climbed into bed feeling this crushing, paradoxical weight.
The feeling that you are somehow simultaneously way too much to handle and yet completely inadequate.
Exactly. It's so isolating.
The isolation of that moment is profound because the defining characteristic of that 1 a.m. thought is that you never ever say it out loud.
You swallow it.
You have to. Because to voice that fear to the very people who are working so hard to support you, I mean, it would make it real. It would feel ungrateful.
It would probably hurt them deeply.
It definitely would. So you make a silent pact with yourself to carry it. You carry it entirely alone, basically convincing yourself that your mere existence is a financial and emotional tax on the people you love most.
Well, that feeling, that terrifying, isolating conviction that you are a burden, it isn't just late-night anxiety. It is a highly documented psychological phenomenon.
It really is. It's an emotional architecture built on a fundamental misunderstanding of love, sacrifice, and duty.
And today, we're going to systematically dismantle the lie you have been telling yourself, the lie that your needs make you a liability.
That is the core mission of this deep dive.
We're going to explore the profound psychological weight of academic and financial guilt, and we're going to do it by looking at two deeply connected narratives from our sources today.
Two very different but completely aligned narratives.
Right, so one is a painfully real story of a college student named Maya who is slowly erasing herself under the weight of this guilt, and the other is a story from pop culture.
The mythological scale of the character Itachi Uchiha.
Yes, Itachi. He serves as the ultimate archetype of the silent guardian.
By examining the intersection of Maya's very common, very grounded psychological reality with the extreme, almost philosophical tragedy of Itachi's choices, we uncover the actual mechanics of why we feel this guilt.
And more importantly, we uncover how to dismantle it.
Exactly. Because the way you are interpreting the sacrifices being made for you right now, it's fundamentally flawed. You're looking at devotion and misinterpreting it as an invoice.
That is such a striking way to put it, an invoice. So let's ground this in Maya's reality, because her life is going to sound eerily familiar to a lot of people listening to this deep dive.
I think a lot of students will see themselves in Maya.
Oh, absolutely. So Maya is 20 years old. She's a sophomore in college. And if you were to look at Maya from the outside, from the perspective of her friends or her professors, she is the absolute gold standard of a young adult.
She's the one everyone relies on.
Exactly. She's the ultimate caretaker. She is the friend who has a mental calendar of everyone's birthdays. She's the one who texts you at 8 a.m. to ask how your incredibly stressful organic chemistry exam went, just to make sure you feel supported.
She laughs on cue. She mediates conflicts.
Yeah, she makes sure everyone in her orbit is comfortable and accommodated. Externally, Maya is thriving. She is performing the role of the low-maintenance, high-achieving daughter and friend just flawlessly.
Yet the internal reality is a stark, dangerous contrast.
Yeah.
Internally, Maya is deteriorating.
She really is.
She hasn't experienced a full restorative night of sleep in 3 months. Her cognitive health is slowly being eroded by a constant low-level state of hypervigilance.
And the psychological literature points to a very specific, seemingly innocuous catalyst for this decline, doesn't it?
It does. It wasn't a major blowout argument. It wasn't a failing grade on a transcript. It was an overheard conversation.
It's always the quiet moments that do the most damage, isn't it?
Almost always.
So it's late at night. Maya is in her room. The door is cracked just a little bit, and she overhears her parents talking in the kitchen down the hall.
Just a normal household scene.
Right. Her father's looking over a stack of paperwork, like financial aid forms, university billing statements, and he rubs his eyes, lets out this long, heavy sigh, and says, "The fees are a lot this year."
And her mother responds, keeping her voice low so she doesn't wake anyone, "We'll manage. We always do."
3 words. We'll manage.
In the context of an adult partnership, that is a statement of solidarity. Is a testament to their historical resilience as a family unit.
But Maya doesn't hear solidarity. She's lying awake in the dark, her nervous system already humming with academic stress, and those 3 words hit her like a physical blow.
Because to an exhausted, highly anxious college student, "we'll manage," does not sound like strength.
No, it sounds like a painful, grinding, bone-deep sacrifice.
This is where we really need to examine the immediate cognitive leap Maya's brain makes. It is a 1 a.m. calculation born entirely of guilt and fear, and it happens in a fraction of a second.
It's so fast.
She hears the phrase, "we'll manage," and her internal monologue instantly translates that data into a terrifying absolute.
I am the reason they have to manage. I am the expense. I am the problem.
Exactly. She fundamentally centralizes herself as the sole source of her parents' struggle.
I really want to sit with that for a second because the sheer weight of that realization is crushing. It's like you are walking around campus wearing this massive invisible lead vest.
A lead vest is a great analogy.
Right. And every time a textbook is bought or a grocery bill is paid or you notice your parent wearing shoes that are 3 years old because they skipped buying a new pair for themselves, another lead plate gets slipped into that vest.
And you just get heavier and heavier.
But I'm trying to understand the mechanics of this. Why do we do this? I always assumed students internalized this guilt simply because they were highly empathetic. Like, they love their parents, they see them hurting or tired, and they feel bad.
That makes sense on the surface. Empathy is the surface layer, but the underlying mechanism is deeply tied to our developmental need for security and, ironically, our desperate need for control.
Wait, control. How does feeling like a burden give you control?
Well, when we are young children, our parents are essentially omnipotent in our eyes. They are the providers, the protectors, the absolute architects of our reality.
Right, they can fix anything.
As we transition into our late teens and early 20s, that illusion shatters. We begin to clearly see their humanity, their vulnerabilities, and their limitations. We see their profound fatigue.
Which is terrifying.
It is. But here is the critical friction point. Because a university student is usually still technically independent, especially in an academic setting where the financial barriers to entry are astronomical, that student feels a profound lack of autonomy.
Oh, I get it. You can see the leaking roof, but you don't have the tools or the money to fix it.
Exactly. You see your parents' exhaustion, but you can't just hand them 50 grand to pay off the tuition. You are hyper aware of the problem, but completely powerless to solve it materially.
And the human psyche despises powerlessness.
It despises it. It is an incredibly distressing state to exist in. So the psyche turns inward to manufacture a sense of agency. We blame ourselves for their struggle because blaming ourselves gives us a false sense of control.
Wow.
If we're the fundamental problem, then maybe, just maybe, we can mitigate the damage by changing our behavior.
If I'm the source of the financial and emotional leak, I can try to plug the hole by simply needing less.
Which leads exactly to Maya's behavioral shift. She engages in what the clinical researcher refers to as performing fineness.
Performing fineness, that is such a descriptive term.
It is a highly destructive cognitive behavioral response. It is the attempt to neutralize a perceived burden by systematically shrinking one's own existence.
Shrinking. It's the perfect word, and it's so tragic to watch. Maya starts second-guessing everything. She sits in lectures wondering if her degree in sociology or English or whatever she's passionate about is even worth the financial strain she's putting on her family.
And because she can't instantly graduate and get a high-paying job to fix the money issue, she starts trying to fix the emotional issue.
Yeah, she starts smiling aggressively around the house so her parents never have to worry about her mental health. If she has a terrible day, she just swallows it.
She stops asking for small things, too. Gas money, a new jacket, help with a complicated administrative issue at school.
She makes herself physically, financially, and emotionally smaller to take up less space in her family's ecosystem.
And we have to look at the biological toll of this performance. This isn't just a mood, it is an endurance event for the nervous system.
It sounds exhausting.
Maintaining that facade requires immense, continuous cognitive resources. You're constantly monitoring your own behavior, suppressing your natural emotional responses, and curating an image of low-maintenance perfection.
It's like you're always on stage.
Exactly. This locks the body into a sympathetic nervous system response, which is a prolonged state of fight or flight.
Wait, really? Because your brain literally thinks that being a burden is a physical threat to your survival?
It absolutely does. When you are constantly scanning your environment to ensure you aren't inconveniencing anyone, your brain is flooded with cortisol. You are in a state of hypervigilance.
So that explains the sleep issues.
Yes, this is why Maya is experiencing severe insomnia. Her brain cannot achieve the neurochemical state required to enter deep, restorative REM sleep because it believes it must remain on guard to protect the family unit from her own needs.
That physiological drain just leads directly to a profound sense of emotional isolation.
Maya is surrounded by friends, she is living with her family, yet she feels entirely, suffocatingly alone.
Because the version of Maya that the world is interacting with is a highly edited, minimized projection. The real Maya is trapped behind a wall of guilt.
It's devastating.
She is literally starving herself of emotional support and physical rest because she's so terrified of adding a single item to her parents' to-do list. But, this brings up a huge question.
What's that?
Maya's parents love her. They are working hard to pay for her education because they want her to succeed. How does the human brain take an act of profound parental love and mutate it into a crushing, toxic weight?
It's a massive cognitive distortion.
We really need to look at the mechanics of this misfire.
This transition from recognizing love to feeling oppressed by it brings us to a crucial psychological concept, emotional debt perception. To understand this, we have to look at evolutionary anthropology.
Okay, taking it back to our roots.
Human beings are fundamentally social creatures wired for reciprocity.
Right, the whole you scratch my back, I scratch yours evolutionary survival mechanism.
Yes. For early human tribes to survive, there had to be an innate, deeply ingrained ledger system. If I share my food with you today, there's an unspoken biological and social expectation that you will share your shelter with me tomorrow.
Makes sense.
This tit-for-tat reciprocity kept communities functioning. So our brains are hardwired to track giving and receiving. In a healthy, symmetrical dynamic, say, between two college roommates, when someone does something kind, like buying you a coffee, your brain registers gratitude and you look forward to returning the favor next week.
The ledger balances easily.
Exactly.
But the parent-child dynamic, especially regarding massive things like university tuition or 20 years of housing and feeding, is anything but symmetrical. It's entirely lopsided.
Entirely lopsided. When the sacrifice is immense, structural, and often unspoken, like a parent working a grueling, physically demanding job for 2 decades to fund your existence and education, the sheer scale of that giving breaks our internal reciprocity meter.
The psychological ledger is blown completely out of proportion.
Because you can't balance it. You can't just buy your mom a latte and say, thanks for the last 20 years of uninterrupted financial and emotional support. We're even now.
Right, the debt is mathematically unpayable.
And because the human brain is so rigidly wired for reciprocity, when it encounters a massive deficit that it cannot easily balance, it panics.
It just freaks out.
Instead of registering the structural sacrifice as pure affection and love, the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, misfires. It registers the unpayable debt as a vulnerability. It triggers a threat response.
Wait, so you're saying my brain looks at my dad working a double shift to pay for my dorm room, and it processes that love the exact same way it would process a physical threat?
That's what the research suggests.
It sounds completely counterintuitive. How does love trigger an alarm system?
It triggers the alarm because, to the primitive brain, an unpayable debt means you are fundamentally unsafe. You owe a monumental debt to the tribe, in this case, your parents, and you lack the resources to pay back.
So you're essentially at risk of being kicked out of the tribe.
The amygdala perceives this as a risk of being cast out or becoming a parasite. So love literally becomes an invoice. The student looks at their tired parent, and instead of feeling a warm, comforting wave of gratitude, their nervous system floods with sheer panic.
They look at that exhaustion and their brain screams, I owe this. I cannot repay this. I am falling hopelessly behind on a debt I never even asked to take out.
That is a staggering way to frame it, but it's very accurate.
The research of Brené Brown on vulnerability comes to mind here. She talks so much about how difficult it is for humans to just, receive.
Yes, her work is highly relevant.
We are so obsessed with earning our keep, with proving our worth, that the idea of unconditional grace is actually terrifying to us.
Brown's findings are perfectly applicable here. One of the most significant barriers humans face to actually feeling loved is our inability to be on the receiving end of grace without turning it into a transaction.
We just can't accept it for free.
We want to believe that love is a commodity we can earn through good behavior, high grades, and low maintenance. The concept of receiving massive, life-altering support simply because we exist is deeply unsettling to the ego.
It's the ultimate tragic irony of the university student experience. You have someone like Maya who is so terrified of being a burden, so desperate to be good, that she takes her parents' utter unconditional devotion and forcibly reframes it as a transactional debt.
She feels she has to earn it.
She is spending the best, most vibrant years of her youth trying to carve herself down, shrinking herself into a size that she calculates is mathematically worth the investment.
Treating herself like a corporate stock portfolio instead of a human being.
Exactly. And this tragedy of misinterpretation happens precisely because the sacrifice is silent. The parents aren't handing her an itemized bill. They aren't constantly complaining about the cost of her existence.
They're just quietly enduring the hardship.
Which leads us to a necessary pivot in our exploration today. If students like Maya are fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of the silent sacrifice, we have to ask, what does that sacrifice actually look like from the inside?
What is the psychology of the person who chooses to carry that burden without speaking of it?
Yes. If the student is the one feeling the guilt of the debt, who is the one holding the ledger? And how do they view it?
It's a vital perspective shift.
To explore this, we're looking at a parallel narrative from the source material that captures the essence of the silent endurance better than almost anything else. We are bringing in Itachi Uchiha.
Now, for those unfamiliar with the sprawling mythological narrative of the Japanese animation series Naruto, introducing a fictional ninja into a discussion about collegiate financial guilt might seem jarring.
A little out of left field, yeah.
But structurally, Itachi serves as the absolute zenith of the silent guardian archetype.
And we are going to strip away the magic systems, the specific fictional lore, and all the jargon. We aren't talking about his specific combat abilities. We're looking purely at the human psychology of his character, because the burden he carries is the mythological extreme of the burden every sacrificing parent carries.
The parallels are actually quite profound once you look at them.
So the baseline here. Itachi was a child prodigy. He was brilliant, graduating from his military academy years early. He became a highly trained special operative, a captain, at an age when his peers were still learning how to throw a punch.
By every external metric, the community looked at him and saw perfection. They saw the golden child who had everything together.
But his narrative hinges on a moment of unfathomable, crushing responsibility.
The political landscape of his world was highly unstable. When Itachi is just 13 years old, still a child himself, remember he discovers that his own family, his clan, is planning a violent coup d'etat against the village leadership.
Which is obviously a huge problem.
This rebellion would undoubtedly spark a massive, catastrophic civil war, leading to the deaths of thousands of innocent people.
It's the ultimate trolley problem, but on a horrific scale. And the village leaders, the people in power, find out about this planned coup. They come to this 13-year-old boy and they hand him an impossible, monstrous ultimatum.
A terrible choice.
They tell him, you stop your family's rebellion, or we will bring a full force of the military down on them. But if we do it, we will wipe out everyone, including your innocent little brother, Sasuke.
It is an ethical nightmare designed to break the human spirit. And Itachi makes a devastating, coldly rational choice rooted in an agonizing love.
He chooses to take on the sin himself to control the outcome.
Yes, he orchestrates the assassination of his entire clan, his parents, his relatives, everyone he has ever known, everyone, except for his little brother, Sasuke. He saves the one person he loves most.
He saves his brother. But here's the critical mechanism of the story, the part that mirrors the silent sacrifice of the parents we were just talking about. After Itachi commits this unimaginable act to save his brother's life, he doesn't explain himself.
The silence is the defining architecture of his sacrifice.
He doesn't go to his younger brother, who is traumatized and confused, and say, listen, I had no choice, the government forced my hand.
No, he doesn't say a word of defense.
He doesn't say, I did this to save you because I love you more than anything. He deliberately, painstakingly frames himself as a cold-blooded monster. He tells his brother that he wiped out their family simply to test his own abilities. He intentionally becomes the ultimate villain in his brother's eyes.
It seems cruel at first glance.
I remember reading this and thinking, isn't that just horrific emotional manipulation? Why would you intentionally make the person you love hate you?
Because from Itachi's perspective, the hatred is a protective mechanism. He knows that his brother is now an orphan in a dangerous, militaristic world. If Sasuke has a target for his immense grief and rage, he will have a driving purpose.
He will have a reason to get stronger.
A reason to survive. Itachi gives his brother a life raft made of hatred because it is the only raft he has left to give.
It is the absolute extreme of absorbing the pain so someone else doesn't have to. I was trying to map this onto a real-world, non-violent scenario that our listeners might recognize.
How would you translate it?
Well, it's like a single parent who works a soul-crushing third shift at a factory, or maybe cleans office buildings from midnight to 6 a.m. Their body is aching, their joints are failing, their spirit is exhausted.
Right.
But when they come home and their kid wakes up for school, the parent puts on a pot of coffee, smiles brightly, and pretends they just really prefer the quiet of the night air.
They hide the struggle.
They intentionally hide the physical suffering. They hide the financial terror entirely to protect the child's innocence. They don't want their kids sitting in a middle school classroom feeling the crushing weight of what it costs to keep the heat on.
That is a highly accurate parallel. And we must examine the internal toll that this absolute silence takes on the one carrying it.
It has to be immense.
The narrative of Itachi highlights how he spent the rest of his life completely and utterly alone. He was eventually stricken with a terminal degenerative illness, and he carried the pain of that in total silence as well.
Never told anyone. He died in battle against his brother, allowing his brother to win, while Sasuke still believed he was a villain. No one knew the truth. No one offered him sympathy. No one thanked him. He carried the weight of the world, and he'd do it without ever issuing a single demand for gratitude.
It's profoundly heavy. It leads us to an incredible conceptual collision in our deep dive today. What happens when the student who is suffocating under the perceived debt of love, the student who thinks they are a burden, sits across from the ultimate archetype of the person carrying the silent burden?
This brings us to a really beautiful imagined dialogue, a thought experiment that bridges these two realities.
So let's set the scene for this. It's a Wednesday afternoon in a quiet university common room. The light is fading outside, casting long shadows across the desks. Maya is sitting there, utterly exhausted, her eyes burning from lack of sleep, staring blankly at an essay on her laptop that she just can't focus on.
We've all been in that exact state of burnout. Oh, totally. And sitting across the table from her is Itachi. He's just reading a book, perfectly still, perfectly calm, radiating this ancient, settled energy.
A stark contrast to her anxiety.
Right. And Maya, maybe just because the silence in the room is so heavy and because she's been carrying her secret fear for months without speaking it, she finally breaks. She blurts out her deepest, most shameful fear to the stranger.
She asks the question she's been running from.
She looks at him and asks, "Do you ever feel like you cost more than you're worth?"
It is a devastating, revealing question. In one sentence, she exposes the exact mechanics of the emotional debt perception we discussed earlier. She has entirely reduced her existence, her humanity, to a cost-benefit analysis.
She views herself merely as an expense on a ledger.
And Itachi doesn't flinch. He doesn't offer a hollow platitude like, oh, don't say that, you're priceless.
No, he just looks up from his book, meets her eyes with his profound calmness and says yes, for a long time.
This is where the dynamic shifts. Itachi does not invalidate her feeling. He acknowledges the weight of it. And then he begins to dismantle it by explaining the mechanics of his own infinitely heavier sacrifice.
He actually tells her the truth.
He confesses to her the reality of his choice. He explains that he destroyed his own life, his reputation, and his family to save the one person he could not survive losing.
And Maya, trying to process this, pushes back. I mean, she asks the question we all ask when we see someone suffering in silence. Why didn't you just tell him? Why didn't you just explain the political situation and say you were doing it out of love?
A very natural reaction from someone on the outside.
And Itachi explains that telling the truth, forcing his young brother to understand the horrifying complexity of the political reality, would have destroyed the simple narrative his brother needed in order to survive his childhood.
Maya recognizes the terrifying isolation in this choice. She calls his existence out for what it is, impossibly, unbearably lonely. She challenges him to justify choosing a life completely devoid of recognition or warmth.
Right. She basically asks, how do you survive the loneliness of no one knowing what you did for them? And Itachi provides what has to be the ultimate thesis statement of the silent guardian.
What does he tell her?
He tells her, loneliness in service of someone you love is still love. It doesn't stop being love just because no one sees it.
That concept completely short-circuits the modern transactional view of relationships. He is decoupling the act of love from the validation of the recipient.
It's so powerful.
He is stating that the purity and value of the sacrifice exist entirely independent of whether the person being saved ever says thank you.
It doesn't stop being love just because no one sees it. It's a paradigm-shifting thought. And once he establishes that baseline, that sacrifice does not require an audience to be valid, he shifts the focus back to Maya.
He turns the mirror on her.
He begins a Socratic interrogation of her assumptions about her own parents. He takes her back to that night she overheard the conversation in the kitchen.
He demands that she examine the empirical evidence rather than her fear-based projection.
He asks her, when your mother looked at those bills and said, we'll manage, did she say it with venom? Was her voice dripping with resentment?
And Maya has to be honest with herself.
Maya, forced to actually replay the memory objectively, realizes the truth. She says, no, she didn't sound resentful at all. She said it like it was a given, like it was gravity or the sun coming up.
And Itachi presses further, challenging her perception of her father. When your father comes home exhausted and looks at you, does he look at you like you are a math problem he can't solve? Does he look at you like a parasite?
And the illusion finally breaks. Maya's voice shakes and she admits, no. He looks at me like I'm the reason he's going to wake up and go to work again tomorrow.
This is the critical pivot of the entire deep dive. This is where Maya's cognitive distortion, the lie she's been telling herself, is directly confronted by the reality of her parents' agency and devotion.
And Ecchi delivers the absolute climax of this realization. He looks at her across that common room table and says, you are making the exact mistake my brother Sasuke made. You looked at someone's sacrifice and you called it suffering. You saw their love in action and you called it a burden.
It is a profound, necessary reframing. We are so deeply conditioned to view hardship, effort, and fatigue negatively.
Because it looks like pain to us.
When we see our parents enduring hardship for our sake, our immediate assumption is that they must be suffering under the weight of it, and by extension, they must be suffering because of us.
But Itachi exposes the fatal flaw in that logic.
Hardship endured out of profound love does not degrade the spirit. It transforms into purpose. The exhaustion is not a symptom of their oppression. It is the physical manifestation of their devotion.
It completely flips the script. But it naturally opens the door to a very practical question about communication.
Oh, definitely.
If the parents aren't actually resenting the burden, why do they choose this painful, silent route in the first place? Why not just sit Maya down and explicitly say, hey, we are working overtime, but we are doing it joyfully because we love you. Why leave the kid in the dark to guess?
To understand the parent's perspective, we have to recognize that for many people, especially across different cultural contexts or generational divides, verbalizing emotion is secondary or even unnecessary compared to demonstrating it. There's prevailing ethos that the action is the sentence.
The action is the sentence. I absolutely love that phrasing. When your dad gets up at 5 a.m., scrapes the ice off his windshield in the freezing cold, and drives 40 minutes to a job he doesn't even like. He isn't just going to work.
No, he's communicating.
That physical action is him screaming, I love you and I am committed to your future at the top of his lungs. When your mom quietly transfers money into your account so you can buy groceries, she doesn't need to text you a heart emoji. The sacrifice itself is the vocabulary.
Exactly. However, while there is a deeply stoic, poetic beauty to this silent sacrifice, our psychological analysis must point out its structural flaw in the modern context.
It has a downside.
This exact silence is what breeds the student's guilt. The parent assumes the action speaks for itself. They know their own internal emotional fulfillment. The student, however, lacking access to the parent's internal emotional landscape, only sees the physical toll.
I just see the tired eyes and the worn-out shoes.
If parents could bridge that gap, if they could verbalize their inner reality and say, this extra shift is a joy to me because it secures your education and you are worth every second of it, it would dismantle the emotional debt instantly.
It's a tragic miscommunication of love. Both sides are operating out of deep affection, but they are speaking entirely different languages.
Very different languages.
And to help bridge this gap conceptually, to give us a new framework for understanding how needing someone isn't a crime, the psychological literature introduces an incredibly beautiful Japanese concept. The word is ame.
Yes, amai. It's a foundational concept in Japanese psychology and social structure, famously explored by psychoanalyst Takeo Doi.
And it doesn't translate perfectly, does it?
It has no direct one-to-one English translation. It roughly describes a kind of love, harmony, and profound affection that exists specifically within the space of dependence. It is the presumption of another's indulgence.
Okay, I really need to unpack this, because this concept is a massive, almost violently disruptive mindset shift for a Western audience.
It runs counter to a lot of what we're taught.
We are raised in a culture obsessed with rugged individualism. We are taught that independence is the ultimate virtue, and that needing anyone is a sign of weakness or immaturity. But you're saying amai flips that entirely.
Completely. To understand mine, imagine a brick wall. In the hyper-individualistic Western mindset, we are taught that we should strive to be a perfect, standalone brick. Self-sufficient, solid, requiring nothing from anyone else.
Just a strong, lonely brick.
But Ame suggests that a pile of independent bricks is just a pile of rocks. The mortar, the sticky, messy substance that binds the bricks together, is the dependence. The need is the mortar. Ame posits that the bond of love is forged through mutual dependence, not in spite of it.
Wait, so needing someone is the goal. That goes against everything I've ever internalized. In the parent-child dynamic, my need, my reliance on them for money, for a place to live, for emotional grounding isn't a burden I should be trying to outgrow as fast as possible.
Correct. Your need is not a disruption to the relationship. Your need is the entire point of the relationship. It is the reason the parent exists in that specific protective role.
That completely changes the architecture of Maya's guilt. They don't love her despite the fact that she needs their financial help. They don't love her in spite of the long hours they have to work to pay for her dorm.
The sacrifice is the literal physical shape that their love takes in the real world.
Wow. Without her need, their love has nowhere to pour itself. If she were completely independent, completely walled off, she would be denying them the opportunity to express their love through care.
And what is genuinely fascinating is that this idea of acting out of pure duty, of pouring oneself out for the benefit of another without requiring recognition or immediate payback, isn't just an Eastern concept or a narrative trope from anime.
No, it goes back much further.
It is deeply rooted in classical Western philosophy as well.
Oh, absolutely. We have to bring the Stoics into this, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca. And I think we need to clarify something right away, because usually when people hear the word Stoicism today, they think of tech bros taking 5 a.m. ice baths and trying to systematically suppress all their human emotions so they can optimize their stock portfolios.
A severe and deeply unfortunate misinterpretation of philosophy.
Right. True Stoicism, historical Stoicism, is so much richer. The Roman concept of pietas, duty to one's family, state, and the gods, was central to their worldview.
The Stoics believed in doing what is right, fulfilling your role in the cosmic play, without requiring applause, thanks, or even acknowledgement.
They believed in acting purely from virtue. And it's brilliant to realize that Itachi, a fictional animated character, is essentially the ultimate embodiment of a perfect Stoic sage.
He really is. He acts purely from a place of love and calculated duty, entirely detached from the outcome of how he is perceived by the recipient of his actions. He doesn't need his brother to understand him in order to save him.
He has mastered the dichotomy of control.
Yes. He controls his actions, and he relinquishes the need to control his brother's opinion of him.
But the philosophical texts pull a specific quote from Seneca that adds a massive, unexpected twist to this entire deep dive. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who craves more."
It's a classic Stoic warning against greed, the hedonic treadmill, and the endless pursuit of external wealth.
But I really have to push back on the application here. How does a quote about a greedy man craving more apply to Maya?
How do you mean?
Well, Maya's entire problem, the root of her insomnia, is that she is desperately craving less. She wants to take up less space, spend less of her parents' money, be less of an emotional bother. She is aggressively trying to minimize her footprint. Isn't she already practicing the ultimate Stoic detachment?
It is an excellent question, and it is precisely where the philosophical framework brilliantly flips our conventional understanding of ego. The craving to be smaller, the desperate, neurotic wish to be a lighter burden that is its own specific, insidious kind of poverty.
Wow, the poverty of smallness?
Yes, Maya believes she's being selfless by trying to disappear. But in reality, she is still entirely consumed by her own ego, just in a negative direction. She is obsessing over her own footprint, her own cost, her own impact.
She's still centering herself in her parents' narrative.
True Stoic detachment in this context means detaching from the anxiety of your own existence.
That hits incredibly hard, because by constantly trying to take up less space, by performing fineness and hiding her true needs, she's actually robbing her parents of the richness of their chosen sacrifice.
She is cheapening their gift by refusing to fully, authentically accept it.
Precisely. When a student actually adopts true Stoic detachment, they stop neurotically calculating their cost. They stop running the emotional spreadsheet in their head at 1 a.m. Instead, they step back and start respecting their parents' autonomous choice to sacrifice.
You must recognize that your parents are adult human beings with agency.
Right. They chose to have you. They choose to support you. They looked at the billing statement and they chose to say, "We'll manage."
To constantly second-guess their capacity to manage is, in a way, deeply disrespectful to their agency and their strength. True acceptance means honoring their sacrifice by making the most of it, not by constantly apologizing for it.
That is the breakthrough. Armed with the evolutionary psychology of emotional debt, the mortar and brick concept of amai, the Stoic detachment from ego, and Itachi's profound perspective on silent love, Maya, and hopefully you listening to this, finally reaches the emotional climax of this realization.
It is the definitive shift from feeling invisible to realizing you are invaluable.
But before we completely cross that threshold and celebrate that breakthrough, we have a profound responsibility to address a very serious, very hard truth.
Because for some listeners, this idea of emotional debt isn't just a late-night worry that causes a bit of insomnia. The thought, I wonder if things would be easier if I needed less, can, and often does, spiral into a very dark, dangerous place.
Yeah. We absolutely need to pause and be clear about where that thought leads if it is left unchecked. If you are listening to this right now and you have felt that dark, pull the thought that maybe the world or your family or your friends would be tangibly better off without your needs entirely, or even without you entirely. We need to reframe the biological reality of that thought right now.
Psychologically and neurologically speaking, it is critical to understand that this dark thought is not a rational assessment of your value. It is not a logical conclusion based on facts. It is a symptom.
Let's underscore that. It is a symptom.
It is a symptom of profound systemic exhaustion. It is the end-stage result of carrying too much cognitive and emotional weight alone for far too long.
It's what happens when you perform fineness until you have nothing left.
Exactly. It is what happens to the brain after months or years of performing fineness until the sympathetic nervous system has nothing left to give. When the brain is that severely depleted of resources, it desperately searches for the quickest possible way to relieve the pressure.
And the distorted, flawed logic the exhausted brain offers is eliminate the need entirely.
But that thought is a manifestation of burnout. It is a mechanical failure of the exhausted mind, not a truth about your worth or your family's desire for you to exist.
And this brings us to the ultimate tragedy of Itachi's silence and the lesson we have to learn from his failure. Yes, his silence was an act of monumental, self-sacrificing love, but his method was devastatingly flawed.
His silence was also a deeply unnecessary, self-inflicted loneliness that ultimately traumatized the person he was trying to save.
Itachi's greatest failure was his sheer inability to trust others with his burden. He believed he had to be the sole martyr. The bravest thing Itachi never did was ask for help. He never let someone in to share the weight of his reality.
And that is the direct message to the student, to you listening right now. You are not Itachi. You do not have to carry the emotional fate of your family in total silence.
You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to drop the exhausting performance of fineness. You are allowed to look at your parents or your friends or your mentors and say, I am not okay right now. The pressure of this semester is really hard, and I'm scared.
Honesty and authentic connection are the exact gifts Itachi never gave himself. And by denying himself those things, he built a wall that prevented true intimacy. Your silence, your desperate attempt to be no trouble at all, often creates a barrier that prevents the people who love you from actually knowing you.
Which brings us back to that final moment in the classroom between Maya and Itachi. Maya is sitting there, letting all this philosophy and psychology wash over her, and she realizes she has been slowly, methodically erasing herself to save her parents' money and stress.
She has been trying to become a ghost in her own life.
And Itachi delivers the final crushing blow to her guilt. He looks at her and says, the people who love you didn't fall in love with a smaller version of you. They fell in love with you. Every inconvenient, expensive, complicated, messy piece of you is what makes the sacrifice feel worth it.
It's a beautiful synthesis of the entire human experience.
Yep.
True love isn't directed at an idealized, low-maintenance, perfectly curated version of a person. It is given to the totality of the person, complexities, flaws, and costs included.
And Maya finally gets it. The spell of the emotional debt is broken. The heavy lead vest she's been wearing comes off. She stands up, packs her bag in that quiet common room, and she realizes exactly what she needs to do.
She needs to call her mom.
Not to apologize for the tuition fees, not to neurotically promise that she'll eat less or need less or get a third part-time job. She just needs to call her and tell her she loves her, because she finally understands that her love, her authentic, messy existence, is the actual return on their investment.
If we synthesize this entire journey we've been on for this deep dive, we have traveled a massive distance from that initial 1 a.m. anxiety. We started with the suffocating, isolating feeling of being nothing but an expense on a spreadsheet.
We explored the evolutionary biology of how our brains distort silent sacrifice through emotional debt perception.
We learned from the concept of Amai that needing someone is the mortar that builds the relationship.
And we learned from Itachi and the Roman Stoics that parental sacrifice is not a sign of suffering, but the very shape that duty, purpose, and love take in the real world.
And now, it is time to actively apply this to your reality. You need to look at your own life. Look at the ecosystem of people around you.
Identify your Itachi. Who are the people in your life who quietly, consistently manage the burden?
The tired father who never once complains about the brutal commute. The mother who seamlessly shifts budgets and skips her own luxuries to make sure you have what you need for class.
The older sibling who accommodates your schedule without asking for praise. The mentor who gives you their limited time freely. They are all embodying that archetype.
They are choosing you repeatedly, day after day, without needing you to fully understand the depth of what it costs them.
And if they are Itachi, then you are Sasuke. You are living in a narrative right now where someone loves you far, far more than you realize.
The exhaustion you see in their eyes, the sacrifices you witness them making, these are not pieces of evidence proving that you are a burden.
They are undeniable physical proofs of your immense, unshakable worth to them.
So the imperative for you moving forward is crystal clear. Stop trying to take up less space. Your attempt to minimize yourself does not help them. It only distances you from them. Start being worthy of the space they are painstakingly creating for you by actually fully living in it.
You are not a burden. You are the reason. You are the entire reason they do it.
This raises one final provocative thought for you to mull over when this deep dive ends and you go back to your day. We spend so much of our youth, especially our university years, agonizing over how we can ever possibly pay our parents or guardians back for everything they've given us.
Right, the ultimate fantasy of zeroing out the emotional and financial debt so we can finally feel free. We fantasize about being successful enough, rich enough, independent enough to one day hand them a giant check, buy them a house, and say, there, we're even.
But what if true maturity isn't about paying it back at all? What if the ultimate act of maturity, the hardest, bravest thing you can do, is finding the grace to stand there, completely empty-handed, look directly at the people who sacrificed everything for you, and simply say, I know what it cost. I love you too.
I know what it costs, and I love you too. That whisper at 1 a.m. I wonder if things would be easier if I needed less.
The next time that thought creeps in the quiet of your room, illuminated by your glowing phone screen, you can finally answer it.
The answer is no. It wouldn't be easier. Because if you needed less, they wouldn't have anywhere to put all that love. Take up the space you're worth.